and welcome to Ways to Change the World. I'm Krishnan guru-murthy, and this is the podcast in which we talk to remarkable people about the big ideas in their lives, the way they see the world, and the events that have helped shape what they think and how they feel. And my guest today is a superstar DJ, Annie Mac. Some of our viewers will be, and listeners will be huge fans of yours, and that's why they're listening to this. Some of them will be subscribers to the podcast and may not really know what a superstar DJ is. So how do you define, what's the definition of a superstar DJ?
Well, I'd like to start by saying I don't call myself that because that would not be good. But DJing has become a big thing in the last 15, 20 years. It is essentially, if an alien came from outer space and said, what does a DJ do? Your job is to keep people on the dance floor by playing records in a creative way. It's to move a crowd of people to the point where they don't want to stop dancing. But DJ culture has become global and become very profitable. So Vegas now, instead of having, huge billboards for people like David Copperfield and Elton John, now has enormous 6-story billboards on the side of the MGM Grand Hotel for people like Tiesto and Calvin Harris. So dance music, electronic music, it's kind of become the new pop music. And people who play that could be construed as superstars.
and obviously, I mean, DJs have always been the ones who introduced new generations of people to new music.
Yeah.
And, when I was a kid, I'd listen to John Peel and he'd put something new on, and that's how you discovered a band. And you're doing that today, and so you're regarded as an influencer, but on a much bigger scale because you're doing it in live venues and in nightclubs and on the radio and all sorts of other ways.
Yeah, so I became a DJ. I mean, I was a DJ as a hobby, but it wasn't until I got a show at BBC Radio 1 where my DJ career really, really became professional. And since then, I've been kind of playing all over the world and playing festivals, from Coachella in the US to places like Ultra in Miami to Sonar in Barcelona, playing all over Australia, just kind of touring the world circuit of festivals and clubs. And then about 4 years ago, I got a full-time job at Radio 1 doing that kind of cutting-edge music nightly show where my job is to kind of, curate the best new music in the world to as many people as possible.
But what is your mission? Is your mission to introduce people to new talent?
It's the best feeling in the world. Like, there's no better feeling than being the conduit of good music to people.
So how did you get here? I mean, you're from a musical family.
From a musical family. I mean, we all played instruments. It was like the Corrs, but we weren't as good looking. Everyone had played about 3 or 4 different instruments.
Just for fun? Or have you had professional musicians?
No, it's just kind of Ireland. Growing up in Dublin and Ireland, it was a very normal thing to do, to kind of play loads of instruments. And in our house, it was mostly traditional Irish music. Concertinas, bowrons, banjos, bouzouki's. I played the mandolin for a while in my teens. So grew up in a musical family, and then left home and went to college in Queen's University in Belfast and discovered club culture. And from then on, it was I just kind of had this awakening, I guess, this epiphany of what music can do. And this idea of a community of people on a dance floor, and this idea of kind of collective euphoria and everyone, it sounds so cheesy, but kind of dancing to the beat of the same drum. And it's a very kind of primal thing, the kind of the pull of dance music. So I experienced that from the dance floor and kind of fell in love with these DJs and this music that was kind of foreign and exotic, and I started collecting records. And then I got a job in the club that I went to and was meeting the DJs and stamping people's wrists in at the door. And then I moved to London and started trying to do it professionally. Yeah. But radio was also a huge part of it. And it wasn't until I moved to Belfast, moving to the UK from Southern Ireland, that I discovered the BBC. And it wasn't until I heard a woman called Marianne Hobbs, who had this really late night specialist music show, that I actually thought I could have a job doing something like that, playing music that I loved on the radio. So I had been listening to John Peel, I had been listening to Steve Lamacq and people like that, but it wasn't until I heard her that I thought, oh, maybe I could do that. And then that was my mission.
I mean, that's really interesting that you only really discovered Radio 1 when you moved to Belfast. I mean, why?
Yeah. You don't get it in Southern Ireland.
You couldn't get it?
No. It's not terrestrial radio down there. You can get it in some parts of the mountains. My mum and dad sit in the car in the driveway sometimes to listen to me. Like, now that they can do it on the internet, it's fine. But back then, wasn't really as easy.
How important is it when you talk about, the primal feeling of a crowd? How important is it where that is? Because I guess in those days, nightclub culture was the thing. But these days it seems to be festivals rather than nightclubs. Does it make any difference?
You know what? It shouldn't. It shouldn't make a difference, and it doesn't. That basic factor of people coming together and connecting and having this moment of collective euphoria through music should happen anywhere, and it doesn't matter where it is as long as it's happening. But it's happening less and less in nightclubs, and there's many, many reasons for that. Also, live music is happening less and less because so many of the venues are closing. It's harder and harder to keep a venue going in terms of a venue that is committed to playing and kind of booking new music artists on a regional level. It's easier in the cities. But, when I started out, there used to be a pick of a kind of 5 or 6 clubs in every town. Now, there's one, and it's hard to keep up. And there's so many reasons for that. You could go into it for ages. There's a council, there's the licensing laws, there's the idea of basic human connection and how that has changed for a new generation. There's phones now, there's smartphones that have come between humans. The idea of connection is very much doing that and swiping, and it's not actually turning around on the dance floor and meeting someone like it used to be. That was your only option. So I feel I'm kind of grieving that time because I think it was so important. But equally, I'm also having a word with myself because I understand that it's 2019 and people have new ways of connecting. But I feel like it's sad because I feel like nightclubs are very precious things. And I think in other countries like Germany and the Netherlands, their nightlife economy is really taken seriously. When you look at it on a very basic commercial level, nightlife brings money into a city. And if you encourage it and kind of cherish it and nurture it, you can really, you can benefit from it in more ways than just kind of on a cultural level, on a financial level too. But, there's clubs like Berghain in Berlin, which Germany, it's a cultural place. They treat it in the same way they would treat it as a museum, Whereas over here, I feel like clubs are kind of overlooked by the government in a way that they could maybe look at again, because I think there's such a huge, rich cultural gift in clubbing and club culture.
But do you think it's recoverable, or is it gone?
No, I think it is recoverable because DJs are still doing their jobs, but they're just doing them at festivals. So festivals have just overrun the UK. And it's getting to the point now where it's getting to tipping point where there's actually too many festivals. So
and people have festivals in their gardens.
Oh
I got an invitation
God.
to a friend's birthday the other day, and he calls it a festival.
Yeah, I mean,
because he basically put on a festival in his garden.
You could have Krishnan Fest. Everywhere. It's the thing, like the cultural thing, and it's trickling down into fashion. And one of my theories on why festivals are so popular is because they're so Instagrammable. There's so much about how you look and what you're wearing and your squad at the festival, and there's all this kind of culture of kind of putting glitter on your face and all this. It's all very kind of how to take a photo. It's photoable, whereas clubs are dark and they're murky and you can't see very well. And that's part of the joy of it, is because you can lose yourself and it doesn't matter what you're wearing, but it's also doesn't really suit the way people portray their lives these days.
Isn't there a change also to the way people are hedonistic?
People don't get wasted anymore like they used to. I think there's definitely if you look at the 90s, I think it was very normal in popular culture for the kind of just even in the way that people spoke, it was very normal for people to be super hedonistic. But now I think and again, it's part of Instagram. It's part of the way that you look, being constantly on show, and your life having to be constantly seen through a lens. I don't think kids want to lose control of themselves. There was a kind of definitely a culture of that being the normal thing to do, I think, even a decade ago. But now it's changed quite rapidly, and it's all about how you look, and you don't want to look a mess. You want to look good. So
I suppose that's a good thing.
It's a very good thing, yeah. And it can also be construed as a bad thing if it goes too far, because you have people being like ridiculously hench, and girls having eating disorders and boys having eating disorders, and the idea of too much emphasis being on how you look, and this kind of permanent obsession with looking right and your life looking the right way, whereas, having flaws and kind of making mistakes is, as we know, vital.
But the role of drugs in our society, our culture, seems to have changed quite fundamentally, away from going out and enjoying yourself with music into something recreational that you'll do away from that. You wouldn't necessarily do it in the old social setting. It's kind of, it's part of your life at home, or people take drugs differently, I think.
I think like the way that, you see a lot of it in America, and it's coming over here as well. The drugs are changing according to what is happening in culture. So, the acid house explosion in the late 80s was a direct reaction to what was happening in the political climate at the time. At the moment, it's more kind of, you read about it and you see it and you can hear it in the music you're playing as well. It's this idea of kind of trying to just kind of blur out life. So people are on kind of a lot of downers. There's a huge Xanax problem. It's a very prevalent thing in rap music and trap music in America to talk about Xanax and kind of being in this kind of prescription drug kind of haze. So it's different ways, as you said, it's a different way of taking drugs.
So how has that changed the way you play music then? Because DJs have always played music kind of according to what drugs people were on who were listening to them, haven't they?
Well, they haven't played them according to, it's the music has changed. So the sound of the music has changed. Dance music is still the same. Dance music, like in terms of house music and techno music and disco music, that still has held on to its structure and its basic components since it's been invented in the kind of late 80s, I guess. Hip hop has evolved massively and changed massively. And that's really interesting, again, in terms of how people look. A lot of the biggest rappers of the new generation, they have tattoos all over their faces because their faces are clickbait. It's like visual clickbait. It's how mad can you look, because your face and your life is on Instagram, so you're going to get more clicks if you look crazier. The way that they rap, even their kind of their dictation, their words all kind of blur into each other because of the way that they are, the drugs that they're taking. They can't dictate their words, so it's kind of hard to understand a lot of the time. So yeah, the music does change directly according to what drugs are on trend, I guess.
But if you're playing to a crowd who aren't, if you used to play to a crowd who were all on ecstasy or something, and now you're not, does that change what your set is?
Yeah, well, I don't.
Sorry,
go
is this a very uncomfortable conversation?
I don't go around with the clipboard and be like, okay, guys, can you tick off which drug you're on, and then I'll do my set accordingly. Okay,
yes.
Great. Ketamine, great. Okay, I'll do. No, I think in my world, the world that I play to, which is strictly kind of traditional, I guess, dance music. I still play the same type of music. Yeah.
But do you think the reason young people are coming to events like that is the same or different?
I think it's the same. I think less people are coming to events. Less people are buying tickets for events because festivals are really expensive and you have to save up all your money to go. So you either go to one festival in the summer or you go to 5 club nights in the winter. And it's kind of, that's your choices you have to make. And people choose festivals because you get, 2 whole days and nights of fun and untold amounts of acts to see. So I think the reasons that people are going are still the same. I think they are. I think there's that feeling of escapism, of trying to kind of lose yourself from the mundane realities and the kind of scariness of the real world, It's interesting when you compare UK festivals or Irish festivals to festivals around the rest of the world, because here we're really feral. We're really, like, compared to like Coachella or something, which is like so clinical and dry, and you have to have a wristband to drink alcohol, and you can only drink alcohol in a certain place, and it's all really, really like logoized, and there's people taking photos everywhere. Like in the UK, you compare that to Glastonbury, and I'm really grateful for the UK, and because we still have this incredible ability to go wild. It's good to see.
Yeah, well, we are sort of the world's louts, aren't we? I mean, in terms of sort of alcohol and all of that kind of behaviour.
Yeah.
And what about the DJs themselves? I mean, are you part of that drug culture as well as DJs? I mean, or are DJs working?
I mean, I think DJs, you always are in that world. So you're always going to have people who want you to party. You're always going to have that. You know, if you go and DJ in a town, the promoter wants you to have the best night ever, and they're going to do whatever they can to do that. I think people they know not to offer me things now. I think they'd feel a bit weird.
Is it not a bit sort of scary and intimidating? I mean, in the early days, did you not feel that you had to sort of join in, or?
No, I'm very grateful, because when I got my radio show, which is a direct correlation to when I started DJing professionally, I was 26. So I was kind of quite grown, and I was able to handle myself and able to immediately kind of pinpoint those promoters who are bad news. So I was lucky in that I was quite grounded by the time I got any sort of level of fame as a DJ. But it's a very, very hard, cruel world to live in. And it's also immensely lonely, DJing. I don't want to be like, get the strings out, but you see it. I see it so much. And I feel grateful that I have this radio career that's kind of ran in parallel to DJing, because especially since I've got this full-time radio show, it's given me this very kind of grounded structure to my life and pretty much a full-time job.
And regular faces and people you work with.
Yeah, it's great. Whereas DJing, it takes you away from your family, it takes you away from home, which is super exciting. It's this constant adventure. But back when I started, I used to tour America on my own and just be getting off planes in Philadelphia or Toronto and not knowing who the promoter was and kind of hoping I'd get picked up by someone. And you get picked up by someone, always a guy in a battered car who, sometimes not sober, and you'd be like, oh God, feel a bit vulnerable. So I did put myself in situations that were probably stupid looking back, but I would never do that now. But you see so many DJs fall into this trap of never growing up because they don't have to. There's nothing in their lives that is holding them to account. There's no one telling them to cut their grass or do their laundry, because they're just moving from hotel to hotel to city to people who just want to party and are treating them like kings when they're just normal people who are playing records. I mean, that's the other thing about DJing, is people can take it very seriously, but essentially you are literally just playing one record after the next. It's not rocket science. And I think some people end up believing that it is. So
that's sort of heretic to say that, isn't it? I mean, these days.
I don't think it is. I really don't think it is. I think you can be excellent at DJing and you can perfect your craft. And there is people who I will respect. And I think, electronic music is not something to be sniffed at. It's culture. It's hugely valuable to our culture and our economy. But the actual art of DJing is not that hard. It's just not. And if you practice a lot and you have the right access to tunes, you can be really good at it. And it's, I just think sometimes that DJs get treated like royalty when they're not.
And how does that work? I mean, how do the stars emerge?
You're playing night after night in front of thousands and thousands of people who are this is the bit I've never been able to get my head around as a DJ, is this kind of blind adulation when I am just playing records, and I can't keep saying it enough. And I feel like a killjoy because I'm standing there and I have this internal dialogue when I'm DJing. I'm just like, what's going on? I'm just playing records. It's just, but it's not me. It's obviously the music, and it's the power of music. And I'm not trying to belittle the power of music. I think music is magic, and I am in awe of it. And I am I don't know what this world would be without music. It's just more DJ culture. I think you see a kind of pattern of kind of, I mean, it's always men, who kind of get risen to the top, and they get treated in a certain way that they start believing that they are kind of higher beings. And I think it's important to remember the kind of absurdity of it all. It is quite an absurd thing to be doing.
I mean, without putting too fine a point on it, is it an industry sort of populated by dickheads? Or
I don't want to say that because I love the industry, and there is a lot of dickheads, but there's a lot of dickheads in any industry.
Everywhere, yeah, of course.
The good thing about DJ culture is there are a lot of women coming through, and you know, I do a festival in Malta every year that I curate and I run, and for the first time ever, we had a 50-50 lineup of men and women, on that festival bill, and that was this year.
Have you ever seen that before?
No, I haven't. But the significant thing about that is that it was easy. And it was easy because there's such a huge amount of women in electronic music coming through. Like, they are coming through like wildfire. You know, they're on the kind of bottom rungs. You still have this huge top tier of like David Guetta and Zed and Marshmello and Jax Jones and Calvin Harris and all these like big guy names who are just getting like mega bucks. But the good news is that the kind of bottom 3 tiers is loads of great women coming through. So it feels really hopeful in terms of electronic music anyway, for the future, that could be a very much equal playing field.
And is that because promoters are pushing women? Or, I mean, how is that happening?
They are now. They weren't. I think it's happened because people have started talking. And I feel like there's been a kind of a push where people are being forced to be aware of the gender splits in their festival lineups. And they're being forced to look at it. There's a few quite key moments where there was festivals announced, and then someone very clever basically just took the festival names and they took out all the men names and just kept in the female names. So you have this festival poster with like 3 female names on it. And that was very impactful because you see the ridiculousness of it, because there's absolutely no reason why there should not be more female DJs, female rappers, female songwriters, like female headliners. There's just no reason. So in the last couple of years, there's been a big kind of push for people to start being accountable for what they're putting out there in terms of playlists, in terms of festival bills, in terms of your staffing, in terms of who works in your studio, all of that. The stats are kind of terrifying. Like, in every element of music, from production is the scariest. So of the 600 most well-known songs last year that were released, 2% of them were made by women. So that's 12 out of 600. So it's just embarrassing. So why aren't women feeling like they can go and make music? There's no reason why, absolutely no reason why they can't do this. And I guess the reason is that in every step of the way, you're seeing only men do those jobs. So you're not feeling like you are welcome or there's a place for you in those worlds. Equally behind the scenes, major labels, it's embarrassing the amount of women who are kind of running those. Same with publishing companies. Same with actual artists, front-facing artists. Of the 100 most popular songs on the UK charts last year, 91 men were credited on them and 30 women were credited on them. So you think, when you look at the charts, you've got these huge names. You know, you've got your like Ariana Grandes and your Jess Glynn's. And so you see and you hear these names, but the reality is the discrepancy is huge and it's not getting any better. That's the bad thing. And the reason for that is it's become very now and kind of the thing to do in music to collaborate, and that's because of streaming. So if you're a big artist and you get another big artist on your record, that means you're tapping into 2 fan bases. So you have double the streaming, and streaming is the cash. So a lot of people are collaborating. So a lot of men are collaborating with other men, and a lot of women are collaborating with men, but women are not collaborating with women. And this is the problem.
Is that because women aren't taking each other seriously?
No, I don't think so. I think it's that it's still a culture where being a woman at the top of your game is a novelty rather than the norm. It's an anomaly. Like, look at someone like Cardi B. She's, the biggest female rapper in terms of sales, maybe ever, but she's an absolute anomaly. Like that, it shouldn't be such a big deal that a woman can be a rapper at that level, but it is. So I think women are probably scared that they're probably scared to collaborate with each other because they're being told that it doesn't work. And I think also what you're trying to do is you're trying to tap into people from different fan bases so you can tap into different streaming fan bases. So a lot of women in pop will get a rapper who's a male to come on their record because that's the rap fan base. So it's kind of It's quite complicated, but...
There's no point collaborating with someone who's got the same fan base as you, basically.
No,
Yeah.
and there's not enough female fan bases. So we need more females just rising up to the top and getting to that point where, A, they don't have to collaborate with people, and B, they don't feel like they have to collaborate with a man. They can collaborate with a woman. Equally, we need gatekeepers in the industry that are female. We need big promoters that are female. And I don't think that promoters are genuinely going, we don't want women on our lineups. They're just thinking in terms of tickets. So they're just thinking we don't have enough female ticket sellers she doesn't sell enough tickets to book her as a headliner. It's crude. It's just money. But we need to have more encouragement for women to get to that headline status. And to do that, you need to have more women behind the scenes, giving women breaks, signing women, developing women, pushing women songwriters. I just think the music industry would be a really different place if it was equal.
And is it that the people at the top of the industry are still basically white men in Britain, and that they sort of promote people like them? Is it the same problem as every other industry, basically?
Yes,
yeah.
Totally. And I don't think it's, I think it's just the familiarity of what you know. I think it's not always the case. I don't want to generalize, but it just is the way it is. Like, as a woman and a festival promoter, I look out for women. I want to push women forward.
And do you think women are
same as a women DJ? I want to play female artists.
Do you think women are sort of guided into particular genres as well?
Totally.
Pop, rather than the more serious or credible or difficult ends of the industry.
100%. There was Mabel was quoted, who's a big pop star, as saying that women need to be given the space to be whoever they want to be, and I think they need women to do that. They need women on their team, letting them be whoever they want to be, because I think a lot of the time women fall into the trap of kind of having, they're inexperienced, they get into the industry, they're being told by experienced men that the best way forward is to do this or that, and you're kind of doing it because you feel like you should, because they know more than you, but they're only seeing it through their eyes.
So how have you navigated this or avoided it?
I don't know. People always ask me, have I come across sexism in the music industry? Maybe it happened, but it's never been right in my face. I've always been wholly supported, actually, by my fellow male DJs. And I feel like I've been maybe even kind of pushed forward because I was a woman at the start, because there wasn't any. So I was definitely an anomaly. And I think people were curious about me and maybe where I got more opportunities because of that. But also the radio, just being on the radio and being able to be judged for my voice and my personality over anything else has been a huge advantage to me, because people feel like they know me. There's that lovely thing in radio where, I walk down the street and people come up to you as if they are your long lost friend, because you've been chatting to them every day and they feel like they're your long lost friend. So there's this lovely kind of closeness and familiarity in radio. So I've been lucky in that I've been judged for my person rather than my physical being.
And you talked about the lives that big DJs lead and how they can be so weird and lonely and not normal.
Yes.
You lead a relatively normal life, don't you?
Yes.
You have a partner and children and a home and all those sorts of things. I mean, is it hard to do?
Well, I've had to totally sacrifice my DJ career to do that. So I spent years building up my career to the point where I was headlining stages at Coachella Festival, doing big shows at all these international festivals, touring Australia. And then I had children. And around the same time as having children, I got this job at radio that was every day. And for me, the idea of being able to have a secure job close to my children that was every day was appealing. Also, it was my dream job. So I carried on DJing, but I had to do less because physically I had a baby in my belly. And so I'm playing these really loud, rowdy clubs with people off their face, screaming in your face. And you're 6 months pregnant and you can feel the baby kicking in your belly. And I remember feeling like so anxious, being like, do you like this or do you not like this? Like, is this bad for you? And like trying to Google about people who work in, factories with loud noise and when you should stop. And, there's not really any rules for being a mother and a DJ, because I don't know any mothers who are DJs. I don't know anyone on the DJ circuit at my level who is a mother. So I'm kind of trying to figure it out as I go along. But what happened was I got pregnant. I had to stop DJing at a certain point. Then I was breastfeeding. I couldn't DJ while I was breastfeeding. I didn't want to travel. Didn't want to be away from my kid. So over a course of about 3 years, I DJed less. I traveled less. And then I just don't get the offers. So I'm not playing Coachella and I'm not playing Sonar. And these, I'm not trying to get sympathy, like poor me, but because I chose this great job at the BBC. And I often wonder if I didn't have the radio and I carried on having kids, how I would have been able to live my life as a touring DJ.
Could you have done? I mean,
well, it's
I suppose you
interesting.
could have. I mean, there are people who travel with nannies. And...
Yeah, so my friends who are DJs, who are guys, who have kids, they travel and they would say bring their family over and they'd do an Australian tour and they'd keep their family and their wife in Sydney and then they'd go off and then they'd come back. So I could maybe have done that, yeah. I don't think my husband would have been up for it though.
And do you feel you've lost something in your career because of that?
Definitely. But it's a choice I made. But it's frustrating. Part of me feels like I want to kind of keep going and show that this is possible. And part of me feels like I want to see my kids. And it's funny now, I'm kind of coming out of the fog of no sleep. My kid has just turned 2 and he started sleeping through, and I'm able to kind of see the wood for the trees. And I'm starting to feel really like I want to get back into DJing again in a big way. But it feels like a bit of a mountain to climb because you have to go and play for the right promoters and kind of build your way back up again to getting those slots. But for me, it's not even about that. It's just about I've just loved DJing so much, the actual act of DJing and connecting with the crowd and being in front of a crowd. I just would like to start doing it a bit more because when you get a bit of a break from it is when you realise just how special it is and how lucky I am to do it because it's so bonkers.
And did your baby get lullabies or dance music? I mean, if you were DJing, because you read those books and they say, you should play a tune and read a story to your unborn
music.
Child.
He got
so that they're familiar when they come out.
Yeah. I mean, they're not afraid of it, that's for sure, when they hear it.
How big a deal is age in that industry? Is it one that you can just go on?
DJing is all right. I think it's okay. I have people to look up to in the world of DJing. I'm 40, but I have Pete Tong, I have Carl Cox, I have people like David Rodigan, who's in his 60s. And it's been interesting for me because the actual, dance music is only like 50 years old. It's still quite a young genre. So it's been interesting to see how it evolves and how the people within it grow old. And when you duck out, and I've always been 100% sure when I was younger, like, there's no way I'm going to be DJing when I'm 40. And now I'm 40 and I'm like, I still want to DJ. So I kind of had a wobble for a bit because you are still playing to young crowds. And sometimes when you're older, you kind of, I look at them and I'm not on their level. Like I'm not drunk and I've got to go home because I've got to get up with the kids. And so there was a while when I felt like, is this legitimate? Is it right for me to be playing to you when I'm not on your level and I'm not, I'm kind of worried about the girl in the front row because she looks a bit drunk and can someone help her? I'm being a bit old and responsible. But now I'm kind of through that and I'm just happy to be there. And I think you probably go through a lot of phases psychologically as a DJ growing old in a kind of young person's world. But I think it's about doing it gracefully and kind of doing it less and just doing what you want. I'm in a really lucky position to just do the ones that make me feel good as a DJ. And
just to come back to the question of drugs, isn't there a sort of a dishonesty about the way, Radio 1 or commercial radio, or popular music doesn't acknowledge the role of drink and drugs in people enjoying a lot of that music. And we have this weird attitude towards drugs in Britain where it's all about prohibition. Mm-hmm. And you see it being played out in the politics of our time and the Conservative leadership contest and all that kind of stuff, where everything is all about prohibition being
until it comes out that they've done it themselves.
Until it comes out that they've done it themselves. But even then they say, yes, I did it, but I don't have a different attitude. The law must be the law and we must enforce it. And I just wonder if you think, given the worlds you live in and have watched for over a period of time, whether we just need to be a bit more honest about the way what people do and why they do it.
I think honesty can never ever be a bad thing, and I think honesty is a very, very good thing. And I think that there's a company, or it's a charity actually, called The Loop. And they've been working with the police in Manchester and a lot of other places to work at festivals where they can do a thing called drug testing, where if you're a kid and you've got drugs somehow, you can bring those drugs to The Loop and they test them and they tell you whether they are too strong to take or too toxic or laced with something, or they say they're okay to take, but take them responsibly, drink water, take half, whatever it is they say. And I think that that's a very good thing, because that's acknowledging the truth, which is that people are taking drugs and it's prevalent in our society, and it's protecting the people who are doing it. And it's testament to the police in Greater Manchester for going along with that. And I think if that was rolled out across the country, it would save a lot of lives.
Should that just be routine at festivals? I mean, we did a piece on Channel 4 News about a festival where they were doing this, free, bring your drugs and we'll test them. And if they're killers, we'll throw them away. But if they're not, we'll just give you them
It's
back.
the same as abortion. It's like people are doing it anyway. So you're either going to let people do it in danger, or you're going to let people do it in a regulated way.
It's interesting that you mentioned abortion, though, as well. I mean, because it makes me obviously think about your Irish, cultural background. I mean, how sort of linked to Ireland do you feel now?
I feel immensely linked to Ireland. I think anyone who's left Ireland will always say that, because as soon as you leave your home country, you feel like even more exaggeratedly from there because you're not there. But it means so much to me to be an Irish person. And I am so immensely proud of Ireland, because I feel like in the last 10 years, something really seismic has happened there, where it's finally managed, not fully, but it's getting there, to break free of the constraints of religion. And it's been so ruled by religion for so many centuries. And just seeing this new generation of children coming through and saying, no, we want to be able to marry. I want to be able to marry my girlfriend or my boyfriend. And seeing a prime minister who is gay and out and in his 30s and progressive. He's not perfect, but just the fact that he is gay and proud and brings his partner to all his formal functions makes me very happy. And the repeal of the 8th thing has been going on for years. I've been very aware of it, and I am so, again, just proud of the fact that Ireland has been fighting so hard against religion.
I mean, could you be misled by the sort of the easy stuff that we see around the change in abortion, the Prime Minister, and Dublin, I suppose? Mm-hmm. Is Dublin the same as the rest of Ireland?
Oh God.
Or is Ireland still fundamentally a very conservative, small C conservative
I'd say
country?
It's still steeped in religion, of course it is. But I do think that those things, they were national. They were referendums. Everyone had their say. So it's not like it was only one place. It was the whole country, and it was a dialogue and a discourse that the whole country were forced to delve into. And it was really interesting. 2 of my best friends are an Irish couple, a young Irish couple, who are, one had a really traditional family, and she said what the gay marriage law did for her family was it made them realize that there's a whole community of people out there, of families with gay kids, who are totally open and proud of their kids. And it made them then realize that it was okay. Because it's just all about appearances, isn't it? It's all about, God, what will the priest say? And what will so-and-so down the road say? It's all so stupid. And so it's that idea of everything being out in the open. And, what you were talking about, just honesty, just the idea of being able to be who you are in a country. It's massive. And yeah, it will probably still, there's an older generation of people who probably would still feel weird when they see two guys walking down the street hand in hand, but they're allowed to. And that's the beautiful thing.
But I mean, I guess for most of your life, we've lived in a period in this country where Irish people don't get abused for being Irish in the way that they did 10 or 20 years before. When my parents came to Britain and had the signs.
No blacks, no dogs, no Irish.
All of that. Do you think there's any danger of returning to that, given the sort of the political environment we live in right now? And the fact that, the Irish border has become such a huge thing that people talk about all the time?
I hope not. I very much hope not. I think I don't think we could ever get back to that point in terms of the kind of blind racism towards Irish people as there was. Also, Ireland is its own country now. It's not part of the British Empire anymore. And I think that it's been a really interesting time watching Ireland from both sides, from living in London and from going back home, and the way that Brexit is being handled in both countries, and seeing the media and Ireland just rolling their eyes.
What are the differences?
Well, there's Ireland just rolling their eyes at England, being like, oh my God, because, in Ireland, you're brought up in school to learn everything about English history. You're brought up to learn all about the famine and all these things that happened during British rule, 1 million people dying and millions of people emigrating under British rule. And you learn about all the royalty and all the kings and queens, and you learn about the culture. And so you grow up and you're so aware of the presence of England beside us. And then when I moved to England for the first time, I'd lived in New York, I lived in Germany. I had culture shock because I moved to this place I moved to Hampshire to study. And no one there knew anything about Ireland. They didn't know that we had our own currency. They didn't know that we had our own language. They didn't know the difference between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. And it was like, how do you not know this? Like, we live closer to you than Manchester. Like, what? How are you not? And no one, I realized that no one had been to Ireland, and still so many of my friends haven't been. Like, God, I should go. So it's kind of funny because you realize that we're still foreigners. And for me, I felt like we just, we're so close. We should not feel like that. But when I moved to England, it did feel like that.
So do you feel like a foreigner now?
I feel like a Londoner now. And I'm very proud to live in London. And I feel like I'm one of millions of foreign people that live in London, and that kind of binds me to London. But yeah, I'm definitely a foreigner in England. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know what's going to happen with Brexit, but I am thinking about buying a little house over in Ireland in a field somewhere, just in case.
But I suppose that's what I mean. Just as an Irish person here, you don't worry. I think a lot of immigrant communities.
I genuinely do worry.
Look at the discourse that's going on, and there's a nervousness. There's like, okay.
Yeah, 100% worry. 100%. I am aware. I've never been more aware that I'm a foreigner in England as I have been in the last couple of years. And I'm very aware of the fact that I have family at home, and very grateful that I have this place very near that I can go if I need to. It's really important to me that I'm Irish, and I kind of hammer it home to my children all the time. Remember, you're Irish, you're half Irish. And I'm really proud of being Irish. And I think it would be very, very good for there to be some sort of national curriculum reminder of the place that Britain or the British Empire held in Ireland, and kind of what happened there over the years. I feel like a huge amount happened so close to the island of England and Scotland and Wales that a lot of people over here just know nothing about. And I think it would be really good for people to know.
So if you're a woman on a mission, if you like, to introduce your audiences to new music and new experiences, how do we fit this into our prism of changing the world?
I've made up my mind.
Okay.
Krishnan. So what I think is that if I could change the world, I would have every human being have the ability to reproduce. So all men, cis men, are able to get pregnant, as well as women, because I wouldn't want to give away that amazing gift. It's a very powerful thing to be able to have children. But I think what a world it would be if men also had that ability, because so much of our society is steeped in these kind of rules of gender. And gender is identified by the ability to reproduce and women to have babies. So if you took that away, I mean, it would be amazing. Just think of it like there would be no gender inequality. There would be no problems with maternity leave. Men would have to menstruate. So there'd probably be statutory sick days for period pain. There'd be free contraception everywhere. Abortion would be a no-brainer all over the world. It's that Gloria Steinem quote. If men could get pregnant, it would be a sacrament. Like, I just think there's so much about being a woman. That's amazing. But still in 2019, we are being held back by the fact that we have uteruses. And that's happening in every level, from top boardroom level to children being forced into marriage and being forced into having children level. And if that could be gone, the world would be a better place.
I mean, well, do you think then? I mean,
it's pretty vague.
It's good. No, it's a good one. It's a good one. But I mean, obviously, if you try and turn that into sort of something real world and possible, I mean, are you saying that
this is all hypothetical.
The big cause of gender inequality, sexism, and everything that follows from it is men's inability to understand or experience what women
100%.
And so how do you tackle, is there another way of tackling that?
Well, you have to get women to get to the point where they are in power in the way that men are. Men are ruling the world. Women aren't. And the reason why women aren't is because they keep being held back because they have to. They have no choice about the bodies that they own. And they are beholden, if they choose to have children, to have to carry them and give birth to them. And if they choose to breastfeed them. So it would make it a more equal playing field because men would have to take time off and they'd have to feed their kids. And even think about the role at home, these kind of traditional roles of mother, father, male, female, all based on these kind of body parts. This biology is gone out the window.
So how's that going to change the way you bring up your own children in terms of what you teach? Do you have a girl or a boy or both?
I have two boys.
Two boys.
How would it change?
How are you teaching them to think about gender then?
Well, I'm trying to encourage them to read amazing books about amazing women. And I'm trying to encourage them to befriend women who are badass and can run faster than them and climb trees higher than them. I am showing them by example that women go to work and women don't have to be the people that make you dinner every night. They can be the people who pay the mortgage. I think it's a bit of everything, really. But if my way to change the world was actually real, my husband definitely would have had one of my children, and I probably would still be touring Australia by now.